It all started when a young couple, John and Sarah, moved into their new home. It was an old Victorian house with a long history, but they didn't care about that. They were just excited to start their life together in a new place. On the day they moved in, they found an old antique doll in one of the boxes. It was a beautiful porcelain doll with long curly hair, and Sarah fell in love with it instantly. She decided to put it on display in their living room, and it quickly became the centerpiece of the room. But something was off about that doll. Whenever Sarah would leave the room, she could swear that she could hear it whispering to her. She would turn around, but there was never anyone there. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, but it started happening more and more often. Soon, John started to notice that the doll would move on its own. He would come home from work, and the doll would be in a different position than where they had left it. He brushed it off as just being his mind playing tricks on him, but deep down, he knew something wasn't right. Objects would move on their own, doors would slam shut, and they could hear strange noises coming from the walls. They tried to ignore it, but it became impossible. One night, Sarah woke up to the sound of the doll whispering in her ear. She turned on the light, and to her horror, the doll was sitting on her chest, staring at her with its lifeless eyes. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. She was paralyzed with fear. This text was voiced using Yandex Speakkit. John woke up to Sarah's screams and rushed into the room. He saw the doll on top of her and tried to pull it off, but it wouldn't budge. It was as if the doll had come to life, and it was now trying to strangle Sarah. They managed to get the doll off of Sarah, but it was too late. She was already dead. John was inconsolable. He knew that the doll was to blame, but he didn't know what to do. He tried to get rid of the doll, but it wouldn't leave. Every time he would try to throw it away, it would find its way back into the house. It was as if the doll had become attached to them, and it wasn't going to let go. Days turned into weeks, and John started to lose his grip on reality. He would talk to the doll as if it were a real person, and he started to believe that it was. The doll would whisper to him at night, telling him to do terrible things. One day, the neighbors noticed a foul smell coming from the house. They called the police, and when they arrived, they found John sitting in the living room, surrounded by the remains of his wife and a pile of other dolls. He had gone completely insane. The police took John away, and the house was boarded up. No one has lived in that house since, but some say that on quiet nights you can still hear the doll whispering to anyone who dares to listen. Years went by, and the house was forgotten. It was left to rot in the middle of the town, with no one daring to enter it. That was until a group of teenagers decided to explore the old abandoned house. As they entered the house, they noticed that something was off. It was as if the house was alive, and it was watching them. They brushed it off and continued exploring, but they soon regretted it. They entered the living room, and there it was, the doll sitting on a chair in the middle of the room, staring straight ahead with its lifeless eyes. The couple stood frozen for a moment, trying to process what they were seeing. As they approached the doll, they could feel a chill in the air, and the hairs on the back of their necks stood up. The closer they got, the more they felt like they were being watched. Just as they were about to reach the doll, they heard a faint whisper. It was almost too quiet to make out, but they could hear it. They looked around, but there was no one there. Suddenly the room went dark, and the couple could feel something brush past them. They turned on their flashlights, and the doll was gone. They searched the room, but it was nowhere to be found. They searched the entire house, but the doll was nowhere to be found. They decided to leave and try to forget about what had happened, but they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Days turned into weeks, and strange things started happening in their home. Objects would move on their own, and they could hear strange noises coming from the walls. They tried to ignore it, but it became impossible. One night, they woke up to the sound of footsteps in their hallway. They turned on the lights, but there was no one there. Suddenly, they heard the faint whisper again, and they knew it was coming from the doll. They searched the house once again, and this time they found the doll sitting on their bed, staring at them with its lifeless eyes. They tried to throw it away, but it would always find its way back. They soon realized that the doll was cursed and that it was haunting them. They sought help from a paranormal investigator, but even they couldn't get rid of the doll. As time went on, the couple started to lose their minds. They would wake up in the middle of the night screaming, and they could swear that the doll was moving on its own. One night, the couple woke up to the sound of the doll whispering. They turned on the lights, and to their horror, they saw the doll standing on their dresser. Its eyes were glowing, and it was moving its arms as if it were alive. They tried to run, but the doll was too fast. It chased them through the house, moving objects and slamming doors as it went. They could hear its faint whisper telling them that they would never be able to escape. In the end, the couple was found dead in their home, and the doll was never found. Some say that it still haunts the house, waiting for its next victims to come along. Others say that it's still out there, waiting to be found by an unsuspecting person who will unknowingly unleash its curse upon themselves.